So this is my mom, Louise, and she adopted me at birth. And I've also got my birth mom, Kathy, and my birth father, Jimbo, on. And we're going to talk about our adoption story today.
How about that?
I remember, Mom, Louise, you and Dad sat me down on the couch and you told me that I was adopted. And you told me what that meant, and um, that I had other parents out there somewhere that you hope that I'd get a chance to meet someday. And I'm just so thankful that I got to meet you guys, Kathy and Jimbo. And um, anyway, like I always wondered who my biological parents were. And then when I was about 15, I got to find out. Kathy had been searching for me and she found me, and then when I was a young adult, I don't remember how old I was, maybe 26 or 27, and I started searching for Jimbo and I found him, and we've been connected since then.
So I had been a Christian a short while, and I was planning on going to college. But before I went to college, I was uh, trying to find something to do for the summer, and came across this organization called the Barnabas House. And I actually have a pamphlet. I was looking through my journals. Oh, she's got the picture. She's got it. I signed up to be a part of the Barnabas House and met Jim there. And this feels a little surreal right now. Met Jim there, and Jim was one of the most flamboyant straight men I ever met, because he wore colorful clothes and he was a professional clown and magician. I went to visit him from college when he was graduating from clown college. And that's when I got pregnant. I think about during the time that we were at Barnabas House, and I feel like I was not thinking about the future. I feel like I was living in the moment. In I wasn't thinking about the impact of that time there. I really wasn't. I would say, and looking back and knowing, you know, all the things that I went through in childhood, I was a very wounded person, and had a lot of growing to do. So when I went to Geneva, then and I got pregnant, I um, well, it's kind of stunning for me to think about where I was emotionally back then. So I didn't feel like we could have a future together. I felt like you were just so young. You were just so young, and I was young.
Yeah, that's right. I remember now. You were older than me.
And I remember that you wanted to get married, or you offered to marry me, and I said no. I also felt like this is something I just have to deal with myself. I enrolled in Geneva in the fall of 1980 and got pregnant in probably like December, the
Yeah,
fall of
December.
1980. And then when I went back to Geneva, and I knew I had to make or figure out what I was going to do. Am I going to keep my baby? Am I going to place my baby for adoption? What am I going to do? I didn't really know what I was going to do. I was scared, and it was just something that I had to carefully make a decision about. So I really prayed about it a lot. I look back in my journals, and I spent a lot of time, pros and cons, all that kind of stuff. Um, Shortly after I came back to Geneva, I told them, the administration, that I was pregnant, and they were making a decision whether I was going to stay in school or not. And they decided that they would let me stay. And I think that had something to do with the fact that the president's daughter was pregnant at the same time and they wouldn't be kicking her out. So I started getting some counseling from the professor of psychology. He really wasn't a counselor, he was a professor, but we talked about options. We talked about adoption. We talked about me raising my baby, where would I go, all that stuff. And I was leaning towards adoption. Then they had me go see a doctor. They arranged for me to go see a doctor to get care, and the doctor was a graduate of Geneva College, and he actually said to me, which was very surprising, it might be best if you have an abortion in this case. And he was a doctor. He was somebody who graduated from Geneva, and he said
Wow.
it might be a good idea in this case if you have an abortion. It had crossed my mind, but it didn't last very long. And I think what his thing was, you're in school, you're around all these kids. How are you going to feel around all these kids? How are they going to feel about you? You're supposed to be a Christian. You're walking around pregnant. Well, that was a pretty interesting experience all along, really. My friend Chris, the one that you met, Jim,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
she is the one that she normalized things for me. She said to me, um, well, you can just leave school, come stay with us. We'll help you take care of the baby. I felt like God was saying that he didn't want me to do that. God gave me the insight not to do that. So that was the one thing that closed. Then my own mother and my sister both said that they would take my baby and raise my baby, but both of them, my mother said, I will raise her, but I will never give her back to you. And for me, for her to say that, I didn't think that I could live like that. And I really wrestled with the idea of giving birth and raising her myself. And because of the difficulties I had in growing up, I was afraid to parent. I was really, really afraid to parent. I didn't want to hurt her. And I'm saying her, but I didn't know she was going to be a girl. I didn't know that, but I
Right.
kind of like felt like she was always going to be a girl. I kind of
Yeah.
felt that way anyway. But so I didn't want to hurt her. So and as I said, I was young. I didn't feel like I could parent at that time. I really didn't. And then just starting school, and that was such a big step for me. I didn't want to have to uh, go to school, be pregnant, try to raise a child, and I didn't want to resent her. And those were all the reasons why I felt like the best option was to place her for adoption. And back then we didn't call it placing for adoption. We called it giving up our
Mm.
baby. That's what we called it. So I wrestled with all of that, and I was leaning towards adoption. And Dr. Van Brogen, who was the professor that was kind of my contact, he was a contact at Geneva. There, I was surrounded by Geneva people that were supporting me. It was Dr. Van Brogen who supported me. Um, then they had an attorney. The attorney that they gave me to work with was a graduate of Geneva. Then the doctor, Dr. Kennedy, who not the doctor who suggested I have an abortion, not him, but the doctor who cared for me during the pregnancy, who was a country doctor and his office was in the woods. That's what I remember. And his
Wow.
office was in like the woods, in his house, actually. So Dr. Kennedy, he was an older guy, and he was a graduate of Geneva, a really kind man. Then there were families who looked out for me. Um, Two of the professors, both named Dr. Carson, and their families would let me come and have dinner at their house. And then the other Dr. Carson, his daughter and son-in-law, they kind of adopted me, and I would hang out with them and have dinner at their house. And Bonnie Carson, who was this Dr. Carson's daughter, she became my Lamaze coach. Her and then my good friend Debbie Roberts, both of them were my Lamaze coach. So I was surrounded by people who were taking care of me at the same time.
Wow.
Um, my grandmother was really upset when she found out I was going to place her for adoption. She was very angry. She said, "You're giving away our blood." And yeah, she really felt that way. And I told you before, Jenny, and that was because I found out that when she was a teenager, she had gotten pregnant and her baby died at birth.
Mm.
So
Wow.
she was, I didn't find that out till years later. So she was really angry with me about adoption. Um, but and I couldn't convince her otherwise that it was the best decision. So there were some difficult times at the school because people would say things about me, but my friends, especially Debbie Roberts, she would, you know, like certain people had a negative attitude about adoption.
Yeah.
You know, they would, like, Debbie overheard people in the library said, "Oh, she doesn't want the baby,"
Oh my
giving the
goodness.
baby away. She doesn't want the baby. And Debbie would, she would call them on what they're saying.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, things like that. That was hurtful. And I know people talked about me, and that was hurtful. But I had a good support system, and that made a big difference. And Dr. Van Brogen, he told me early on. He said, "We know of some families that are looking to adopt." And I saw that in my journal today, Louise,
Oh,
where
yeah.
he had told me that. Yeah, he said, "We have some families that are looking to adopt." And so I don't know if you know this, Jim, that so Dr. Van Brogen worked for the college, right? I'm forgetting names, Jim. Help me out. Your,
My uncle Dean,
your uncle. Yeah, Dean
Dean Smith.
Dean Smith was a pastor at a church that was somehow close to the college.
Yeah.
And when they told me that they gave me stipulations for staying at school, being pregnant, that I would have to go under the authority of a church. I would have to confess to the elders, which I feel a certain way about that. You know, they didn't make it easy for me. Okay.
Wow.
And so I would
Wow.
have to be under the authority of a church, confess to the elders my sin, and I would have to go to church every Sunday, be in that church. That was the church that Dean Smith.
Oh, you went to Dean Smith's
I
church?
had to. They put me there.
Oh,
You didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Oh yes,
That is
Oh,
so
you
weird because
poor girl.
yeah.
Dean used to tell me, like, I remember being a little girl and Dean used to tell me, "Your mother is so beautiful." He just would always say that.
Wow, wow.
Um,
Yeah. So I saw him every Sunday, and then
Nancy.
your sister Nancy. I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting names today. Yeah, Nancy. She worked at the college too, and I saw her. She was very kind. She was very kind to me. All the people, all the adults at Geneva were very kind to me. They really were. Okay, so summertime's coming. You and I talked on the phone once, Jim.
right.
Maybe
I was on the road. I think I was on the road in the circus,
yes,
and
yeah,
I got these forms in the mail, and I had to fill them out, sign them, and get them notarized or whatever, and send it back. And so yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
yeah. I felt really bad for you because I took the decision away from you in a sense. I mean,
But I was like, well, I'm just starting my goal, my dream was to be a clown with the Ringling Brothers Circus. So, and then here here you are pregnant. And I thought, well, I don't know. I guess she decided for me, and this is the best decision. And I was a born again Christian and believer, so I thought, okay, well, it's in Lord's hands. He's going to find somebody a good home, and and then I got a message, saying, hey, I had the baby.
Yeah.
Her name was Sarah. So for 20 years, 20 some years, everybody I ran into was Sarah. I was
Yeah.
like, how old are you? Where do you live?
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to say again, Geneva people took care of me. Um, Dr. Patton and Peyton. She let me stay at her house. I did house cleaning for her. She let me stay in her house. And while I was pregnant, and then I actually went into labor when I was at her house. And then Bonnie's husband, Rick, he drove me to Dr. Kennedy's house when I went into labor. And it was a very long labor. I don't know if I told you that, but it was very, very long. When she was born, I was exhausted, really exhausted, but they handed her to me to hold, and she was so tiny with her her hair was dark when she was born. It was dark, and they put her on my stomach, and she curled her little finger around my finger, and
Oh,
she wasn't she wasn't real, noisy. She didn't scream or anything. She was kind of mild as a child, as a baby, little baby born. And they said, they're going to clean her up, and then if I wanted to hold her again, I could. But after they cleaned her up, I was exhausted, and it all hit me what I was doing. So I said, no, that's okay. It's okay. I wasn't going to hold her again. And I'll tell you, that night, I wanted to die.
I'm sorry.
I did. I wanted to die. But I felt a really strong presence of the Holy Spirit come over me, and I felt like God was saying to me, you have more life to live. It was really hard after that because it was this traumatic event that occurred. I was pregnant. Now I'm not pregnant. I go back to school. Everybody's living their life. And I can't, I'm grieving inside. So that was really, really hard at that time. Actually, shortly after that, Jim, I met the man I'm still married to. I had no desire to be with a man at all. I mean, I pretty much was like, no, God, no, I don't want that. But we ended up getting married a year later, and we're still married. So the hardest part, and another hard part, and I talked to them about this, was when I had to go to court and give up parental rights. And either the attorney never, if they never informed me that I had a year to change my mind. I don't
oh
remember
wow,
them ever
Wow.
telling me that,
wow, that really,
Wow.
which you did too, Jim. You
yeah.
weren't here.
Wow.
They never told us
Oh my
this.
goodness.
So when I went to court to give up parental rights, the judge, I wrote all this down, but I don't have it in front of me. But he was very kind, and he said to me, "Do you understand that this means that according to the law, or based on the law, you are not, they will never recognize that you had a child. Like, you're giving up your parental rights, so it's as if you never had a child.
Wow.
And I
The
don't know
way
that
they
they would
worded
say
that.
that. They were like that back then.
That's
Yeah.
Mhm.
Today it's different. It's different. So I have in my journals, years go by, and I'm marking, and I know you probably did this, Jim. I'm marking how old my baby is, how old
Right.
Wow.
Sarah is every year. All the grieving that comes every time it comes close to her birthday, all that comes along. And then I end up doing casework for an adoption agency. This is years later. I become a contract worker, and I'm doing child profiles. I'm interviewing adoptive parents, doing that kind
Wow.
of work. And the woman who works with me, she's a search agent. So if you come to her, she'll help you find your birth parents, or if you're looking for the child you placed for adoption, she'll help you find your child. And she said, I'm going to look for your child. And I was like, no, no, I don't want you to do that. I don't want to interfere with her life. She's
Uh,
lived a life. I don't want to interfere with her life. I don't want you to do this. Well, she did it anyway. So she came really close. She said she was adopted by someone at Geneva, from Geneva College, someone who had a relative from Geneva College, and she probably lives in the Midwest. She told me that.
wow.
Wow.
I would say for me, it was the biggest, until that time in my life, trusting God to have my child be raised by a loving Christian family. That was an act of faith, and you said the same thing, Jim,
Right.
where you trusted God that she would be with a loving Christian family.
That was good. That was awesome, man. Louise, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
You're here
you.
with us today. I know he is.
I remember when I first talked to Jenny the first time,
Yeah.
when we communicated, and I realized, oh my goodness, she's a Christian, and she's a strong Christian.
Yeah.
Her family is a strong Christian family. I was like, I was so happy, I was just so
Yeah.
happy. The first time Jenny and I met actually was at Dean and Nancy's house down the street from me, which
Yeah.
is weird.
That's
They lived,
crazy.
Jim, they lived down the street from me.
Oh man.
Like, Jenny actually walked
Oh,
past my house,
oh.
came for a visit.
Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
And
Yeah.
there were
So,
people in Geneva who knew. Nobody ever
Wow.
told me.
yeah.
Wow.
I remember making my initial contact was, I didn't expect anything more. I just
Right.
figured because I was in that working for that adoption agency, I figured if Jenny's anything like me, she's going to want to know everything about me, what happened and why and all that stuff. So that's why I sent the pictures and the letters and all that.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it was a matter of give her the information that she needs. But I never in my heart thought this was actually, I was going to actually have a relationship with her, become a part of her life. I never expected that. And it was just such a blessing, and now I think about the fact that I had when I was in Philadelphia choosing where to go to college, it was between Geneva and Messiah. And I picked Geneva. And that's interesting because that's where the connection is.
God's putting the pieces together in the big picture
Yeah.
of where we each belong, and being a part of Jenny's life and each other's.
And I have to say, as a parent, with Leah was born in 83, and Nathaniel was born in 85. And it wasn't until I reconnected with Jenny but I felt like I deserved to be a parent. It was weird. It was like once I reconnected with Jenny, I felt like something changed where I didn't feel unworthy. So I guess I carried a lot of shame inside of me, a sense of like I didn't deserve to be a parent. But after connecting, it changed everything. It really
Yeah.
did. I felt the freedom to parent and didn't even know that stuff was there. Do you remember when you were at my house when it was Mike and my anniversary and the part that you played in that?
Yeah, I do.
It was our 25th anniversary.
Wow.
To be honest, we were going through some difficult times. You know, we were just planning on going out to dinner, and Jenny came up with this idea to make dinner. And it was one of these things that it just had such a major impact on our lives, you know, and it was like kind of a recommitment between us after that, because having the kids around and doing all that stuff for us, it was like you look at your marriage and you know you see that it's not your individual stuff, it's
Right.
involves your whole family, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a very remarkable evening for us, and Jenny was there, you know, she was there.